Welcome back to the Morgan Streetman Show. Time to go out there, and going out there just involves regular, basic news stories because the world we live in is so crazy and out there, Morgan Streetman.
Yeah, we've been out there now for over a year, haven't we? I mean, we were pretty early on this story, just using common sense. I mean, and it seemed pretty obvious to me that, you know, the level 4 biosafety lab in Wuhan that was working on engineered coronaviruses is more likely the source of this outbreak than some wet market, and because they're cutting up the bats and making bat soup there, which they didn't even make at that market, that somehow that people got sick from the bat soup. They got the bat virus from the bat soup. You remember that was the original story. I mean, I remember seeing the pictures of people with like a bat soup in a cup. It looked like at a mall. Those pictures turned out to be from Indonesia, not even from Wuhan. But what do those details matter when you're constructing a narrative, right? When the media wants to tell you a story, what do those kind of details matter about? It's a picture. Don't worry, it evokes facts, even though it's not factual. Well, I mean, we told you so much about this. I mean, we've talked to you, early on. And if you remember early on, I mean, our friends over at Zero Hedge posted some articles that had been written. Some people didn't like the scholarship on them, but, at least people were thinking and they were coming up with concepts. And there were some Indian researchers who looked into the genome of the SARS coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2, and said, hey, it looks like there's some insertions of some parts of HIV into a basic coronavirus genome. It has these insertions of the spike protein and other things in the genome. And Zero Hedge got permanently banned from Twitter for daring to post such a thing, for daring to speak freely, because at that time the only acceptable statement was that this came from bat soup at the wet market. Remember, this was strictly zoonotic. This strictly came out of animals, even though there was no evidence, zero evidence that actually supported that. Zero evidence, and there was a lot of circumstantial evidence that supported the theory that maybe this came out of that biosafety lab. So there was a lot of evidence on one side, zero evidence on the other. But as you all hopefully you can remember back to a year and a half ago, you are not allowed to think about this coming out, and certainly not allowed to speak about it. This is serious wrong think, which now turns out to be right think. Now all of a sudden, we just pretend like that never happened. Nobody's held accountable. Now it's just, well, yeah, of course. I mean, of course that's the leading theory, that it came out of that lab. That's what everyone says now. We've got like the head of the NIH, National Institutes of Health, Dr. Francis Collins, who is Dr. Fauci's boss, by the way, an Obama appointee. He says, I never rejected the theory that the virus came out of the Wuhan biosafety lab. No. I mean, where were you guys? I mean, no, we always said that was one of the theories. And yes, there was evidence to support it. I mean, that's their claim. We always said that. I mean, it was to the point where, how can you trust anything these people say? Remember Dr. Robert Redfield, head of the CDC under President Trump? Well, guess what he has to say? Maybe this will help you remember what was going on if you think, Morgan, they were always saying that. I mean, I don't know why you're making such a big deal about this. They always said it could have come from that lab. No, they didn't. They said that absolutely was not possible, that it definitely came through animals, to the point where you're not even allowed to mention the possibility that it came from that lab. And we were talking about it. Now, Vanity Fair, not a conservative publication, Vanity Fair said that they did a months-long investigation into this whole issue, including what we're about to tell you about Dr. Robert Redfield. They interviewed 40 people, reviewed hundreds of pages of U.S. government documents, including internal memos, meeting minutes, email correspondence, and they found major conflicts of interest throughout this situation, which we've told you about before. That's that guy, Peter Daszak, who was the one running EcoHealth Alliance, which was the entity to which the NIH and NIAID, which is Fauci's organization, were giving these grants to EcoHealth Alliance. They were essentially laundering the money through EcoHealth Alliance, which is supposedly a charity run by this British-born scientist, Peter Daszak. And he was from EcoHealth Alliance, funneling the money over to Wuhan Institute of Virology to run this gain-of-function research that the U.S. government was not allowed to fund. So they were laundering the money through EcoHealth Alliance so that the U.S. government wouldn't be funding gain-of-function research. And Fauci would have plausible deniability. No, we're not funding gain-of-function research. We're giving money to EcoHealth Alliance. Well, what's EcoHealth Alliance doing with the money? Oh, they're giving it to the Wuhan Institute for Virology to run gain-of-function research. And all the details are out there. If you say, Morgan, I mean, you're just talking. How do we know this is true? The details are out there. The grant numbers, the money, the exact purposes of the studies. It's all out there. People have done this research. People have listed it out. You can go through and verify this. I've verified it. You can verify it on your own if you're interested in looking through all this detail, or you could take my word for it. And I'm telling you the truth, just like we've been telling you the truth from the beginning of this thing where we said, look, common sense tells us it came out of that lab. Now, we don't have any particular evidence other than the fact that the lab is there in the city. They are studying this. It was already known by our State Department, and they reported back they didn't have proper safety protocols at the lab. The outbreak started with lab staff. Except for those facts, no, we don't have any direct evidence. We don't have a functioning electron microscope that saw the little particle fly out of the lab or something, the direct evidence that it came out of that lab. We don't have that. But we've got all this circumstantial evidence. And I'll tell you that there's no evidence for this concept that it came through animals. And we went through and talked about why that was, about how when a virus or a disease makes a jump from animals to humans, how it works. It doesn't happen instantaneously. It has a bunch of false starts. It tries a bunch of times before it actually gets it right and successfully makes the jump. And then you can go back in the population. You can analyze, blood samples and other things, and you can find the evidence of those false starts, those attempted jumps from the animals to the humans in various populations. And that doesn't exist for this virus. So we know it didn't come from animals. So we told you all this a year ago. Here we are telling you the truth. And hopefully that's why you like listening to this show, because we tell you what we really think, and a lot of times it happens to be the truth. It turns out to be the truth. And a lot of times we have to do what Governor DeSantis does and stand there with the steel spine and stand up to all the media propaganda saying that what we're saying is wrong, what we're saying is a banishable offense, and we have to stand up to that and say, no, this is what we really think. And we've done that for you consistently for 6 years, and hopefully that's why you like listening to this show. Well, here comes the music. We had so much more. There's so much more we could get into. I was going to tell you about Robert Redfield as part of this report. He says he's getting death threats from his friends and colleagues in the scientific community. And just think about this. Just think about the scientific. Can you imagine a scientist in a white lab coat calling up his colleague and saying, if you don't stop talking about this, I'm going to kill you? Can you imagine that? Is that science? Should we follow the science? Is that science? We had so much more to cover. There's lies everywhere in this. If you're interested in this, you got to dig into these Fauci emails. Fauci's been exposed completely. He's a total liar. His emails prove it. He knew all about this. They knew this was gain of function. They covered it up. I'm Morgan Streetman, and that's the way I see it. Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard, and if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And remember that we recommend that you exercise your brain at least once a week.